Good morning, everyone. Welcome to You Can Talk. My name is Ruth Finney. Good morning, true fan. How are you this morning? Good to see you. Good to see you. I'll just get everything set up here. All right. How are you all? I hope you're well. If it's morning, afternoon, or night, it is good to see you this morning. We are moving on in this new series, and I'm talking about controversial issues. And this morning, we're going to be talking about therapy. Therapy. I know a lot of communities, a lot of people, a lot of cultures have all kinds of thoughts and ideas about what therapy is, whether or not it's something that you should partake in, whether or not it be, all sorts of things. People have their own biased opinions about whether or not they think therapy is something that is even worth it. Good morning, Levi. How are you this morning? Good to see you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So we're going to talk about, what therapy is and what therapy isn't. People, like I said, it's a taboo topic for multiple reasons. A lot of times people feel like therapy is only for people who have severe mental illnesses or have issues in their families or in their lives that are so big that they don't know, what to do with them, how to handle them. Maybe they've tried, talking to family, they've tried talking to friends, they've tried talking to God, or maybe they're on the verge of really taking some severe measures and trying to help themselves, maybe on the verge of committing suicide or doing something extreme. And so they feel like, therapy is sort of a last resort for that. But it doesn't have to be that. A lot of times people feel like they'll just be judged, if they jump into therapy. Good morning, the Daily Bliss. How are you? Good to see you all this morning. Welcome, welcome. People feel like, like I said, that they'll be judged, or like they'll feel like a failure or feel ashamed if they partake in something like therapy. And so they just don't want to do it. Or maybe they feel like, they're not the ones that has the problem, that has the issue, right? It's the other person. It's my mate. It's my friend. It's my spouse, or somebody else that has the issue and not me. So if any therapy is needed, it's going to be needed by the other person and not me. So these are all sort of the things that I have heard throughout my life as to reasons why people don't partake in therapy, won't even consider it as an option. So I'm going to talk if therapy is something that you've ever thought about, if it's ever crossed your mind, if it's ever been put on the table in front of you, if you've ever considered it as an option and you were quickly like, oh, I'm not doing that. That's for, other people, or that's for, people who are more severe, have more severe issues with us. We're going to take care of ourselves. We're going to take care of this issue. What happens in this house stays in this house, all that kind of stuff, right? If that has been where you are, or if that is where you are, I fully understand, but I'm going to talk to you about therapy from a realistic perspective and give you all some of my experiences, things that I have been through with therapy that will hopefully at least help clarify for you all what therapy is, so that you all don't have any misunderstandings, or you have a better idea of what therapy is and how it might be able to help you. I have been in therapy multiple times in my life. From the time that I was a child, I went again when I was a teenager. I went through therapy again when I was, married, during my first marriage, and also after. So I'll talk with you all to try to hopefully clear up any misconceptions that you all may have about what therapy is. So the first misconception that I see that people have is that they think that therapy is going to solve all their problems, right? You're like, well, Ruth, if it's not going to solve all my problems, then why am I going to go? I totally get that. But therapy does not always solve every problem that you have, or but what it can do is it can help you learn to cope. It can give you some tools to help get through those problems. But just because you go to therapy doesn't mean that they're going to have all the answers. So, but hang with me now. Hang with me. Don't give up on me saying that. Okay. Well, if it's not going to solve my problem, then I'm not going to go. I know. I hear you. But it does not. We think that it will solve all of our problems. And it can solve a lot of problems. It can solve a lot of problems. And it can do a lot for us. And so just hang with me and I'll continue to talk about it. But it doesn't always solve all of our problems. Another one is we think that 1 or 2 sessions of it'll do. Okay. We think, okay, I'll sit through this session with you, or we'll, hopefully they'll tell you what you need to do, and then we can go on about our business, right? And a lot of times therapy is something that involves a commitment. It involves more than 1 or 2 sessions. I don't know for any of you all who may have recently watched this situation that happened on social media where Kirk Franklin, one of our, gospel artists who is pretty popular, had gotten into an argument with his son, and it had gotten exposed on social media where he was having a fallout and, cussing at his son and being upset for the way his son was disrespecting him in the conversation, from what we could tell, from a little snippet of what we could tell. And so that got revealed on social media. Well, if you watched any piece of that, you'll see that the first thing he said was, when I hung up from that conversation, I immediately was upset and realized what I had done and what had happened. And I immediately called our therapist. And so because they have a family therapist. And then if you watch the interview even more, he said, we've been going through therapy for 25 years. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's the longest of anyone that I have ever known to be going through therapy. But they've had a therapist in their life for 25 years. And you think, well, if they're still going through therapy, like if they had 25 years of therapy and they're still going, through and having fallouts and family breakdowns like this, what is therapy for? Well, we don't know how therapy has helped them throughout their lifetime, throughout their relationships. Just because you go through therapy doesn't mean that you'll never have another fallout, that you'll never have another breakdown. But what it can mean is that you can recover from those breakdowns. Therapy can help you recover from those breakdowns a lot faster, than you would maybe if you don't do therapy. It can help you cope with the breakdowns so that they don't destroy your mental state or cause more damage than necessary. It's kind of like when you become a Christian, right? Or if you become saved. For those of you who are Christians or who have taken that commitment of walking with the Lord. People think that just because you're saved, that you're never going to sin again, right? Well, we know that's not the truth. I don't care how long you've been walking with the Lord. You can be saved for 1 year, or you could be saved for 50 years and you still may sin, right? Christianity or salvation does not dissolve all of our problems, right? But Christianity is a tool that helps us to be stronger, that prevents some issues and problems from occurring. It strengthens us through some of the issues and problems that are occurring, and it helps us recover faster from those times, or get to that place of repentance faster than when we may not be saved, right? So therapy functions like the same way. It's the same way. You can consider it the same way. It may not solve all of our problems, but it can definitely help prevent some problems, some issues. It can help us, strengthen us through some of the issues and problems that we're having, and it can help us recover faster from some of the issues and problems that we may be having. And so they have a family therapist, which I love that he said that. But just hearing him say that they had been, having this therapist and going through therapy for 25 years really helps people to understand that, therapy is a commitment, and that sometimes it can be something that you can do for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, or it may take multiple years. It may be something that you'll have in your life for multiple years. And it just depends on you and your family, your situation, or, what the issue is. So So just know that it's not always one or two sessions that is going to, take care of your issue. The other misconception is people think is, like I say, it's going to take care of the other person. That people will often go into therapy thinking, I have no problems whatsoever, but that this one right here, right, this one right here, you need to help this one. And so people will walk into therapy with the misconception of thinking there's no work that I have to do. Like I don't have a problem, it's the other person. So and they will find quickly that often it's both people or all the people involved in the therapy session that are going to have to put in some work. It's not just one other person. It's not just the one person who you may think has the issue. It's typically everyone. We all play a role. If it's a relationship, it's two people or multiple people, depending on what type of family, it's a family or work situation, whatever. Everybody plays a role, and therefore everybody has to be willing to put in some work. Another misconception is that people think all therapists are created equal, and they are not. You may have met one therapist or run into one therapist or had a bad session with one therapist and think, I am done with therapy. I'm done with counselors. I want nothing more to do with that, right? Because maybe you got a bad therapist or someone who didn't understand you, someone who didn't listen, someone who, had their own agendas or whatever it was. And so you had a bad therapy session and you decide, you know what, that's not for me. But not all therapists are created equal. And if you really are wanting to make some changes in your life or in your relationships, then you have to consider that I may need to look for more than one therapist. It's literally like finding a doctor, right? We may see one doctor, we might like that doctor, but we've all been to doctors, we're like, oh, I don't like that doctor. They don't have good bedside manner, or they're too young, or they're too old, or they're not knowledgeable enough on my issue. Or maybe I need to see a specialist, right? We have all these things. Well, a therapist is pretty much the same way. We may have to see more than one therapist or seek out more than one therapist that can understand us. We may want someone who's the same gender as us. We may want someone who is the same culture, from the same culture as we are, because we think they'll understand us better. If we have certain religions that we practice, then we may want to find someone who has that same religion so that they can talk to me from that perspective. We may want someone who is specializes in our issue, right? If it's depression or addiction or abuse, like whatever it is, then we may want to try to find someone who specializes in that so that they can really speak to our issue. So please don't think that all therapists are created equal, and you may have to seek out a different therapist, someone who specializes in understanding children or marriage or divorce, whatever it is. So yeah. Another misconception is that we think that there's no work required. We think that we're going to go, we'll tell the therapist our problem, they will say some things to us, and then that's it. We can move on, right? Well, that is far from the truth. If you are not ready and willing to put in some work to salvage your relationship with others, or to salvage your relationship with yourself or your relationship with God, whatever relationship it is you're struggling with, then you need not go to therapy, because therapy is work. You will have to put in some work. They are going to give you some tools. They are going to give you some suggestions, some advice, tell you some things that they know works, but you have to ultimately be the one to put the work in. So if you're not ready or willing to make any commitments to make changes, then you're going to struggle with therapy. Okay. But if you say, I really want to improve my relationship with this person, my family member, my loved one, my spouse, my child, my friend, my coworker, whoever it is, or I really need to improve my relationship with myself, I'm struggling with some issues, then know that you're going to have to put in some work if you're ready to do that. And it's not hard. Sometimes it's hard work. It is. Sometimes it's hard. And sometimes it's not so hard, right? It's just a matter of how we mentally see it, how we choose to see it. Therapists cannot read our minds. They cannot read our minds. So when we go to these therapy sessions, we have to be willing to talk to the therapist and let them know what's going on and be honest about what the issues are, at least as far as what we know that they are, right? they may help us to realize that the issue is bigger than what we think it is, or the issue that we think it is not the full capacity of the issue. But we have to be willing to be honest, like, and say, I'm struggling with this. This is an issue for me. I don't understand this. We have to be willing to be honest and open and share with the therapist so that they can really help us with finding our way through, or finding our way back to a healthy state, or a healthy mental state. For me, and I'll talk with you all about some of the issues and areas that I did there in my life. For me, I went to therapy when I was a child, a very young child, and I did it through my school, because when I was in the second grade, I had a very racist teacher, and she had never had in many years, I guess, a Black student in her class. It was a fairly mixed school, but I noticed they had all the Black students kind of in one class. There were maybe a few trinkles of students in another class. And then there was this other class that had all white students. And I was a transfer into that school, and they put me into her class, right? Because they did testing scores and all that stuff. And they're like, well, this is the class, the level that she needs to be. And so they put me in that class, and she did not want me in her class. She ignored me. She didn't want me touching her. She just had a hard time. I had all kind of problems, being in her class. And you can imagine, I'm, 7 years old, 8 years old, struggling with this woman, who doesn't like me. And so I had a hard time dealing with that, coping with that. So I started struggling in school and all that. So I had to start going to therapy. And we had to have therapy. I had to have therapy with the counselor and the teacher and different things. And so conversations had to happen so that I could get through that school year. And so we did. We had that was my first experience of therapy as a very young child, was dealing with that racist teacher. Then I moved to going to therapy sessions. For those of you who have been watching my classes this week, I've been talking about addiction and enabling and all that sort of stuff, because I did have family members in my family who struggled with addictions, drug and alcohol addictions. And so, needless to say, that caused some issues in our immediate family and in our relationships. And so throughout my middle school, high school years, I had to attend a lot of therapy sessions to deal with that, to help in my coping with that. And then when I got older and got married in my first marriage, I was married to someone who suffered from mental illness, and I had zero experience with that. So, and I didn't know how to handle that. I didn't know how to, deal with that. And so I went through therapy during that time. We went together so that we could help learn to deal with that. And then after we got divorced, right? You think, Ruth, y'all went through therapy and you still got divorced? I know, but believe it or not, the divorce didn't have anything to do with necessarily how we got along. We were able to really do a lot of healing in our marriage before the divorce actually happened. But we did end up getting divorced for reasons sort of outside of, that mental illness. But we, after we got divorced, I went through therapy again to help cope and deal and make sure that I was moving forward in a healthy way, right? So multiple times throughout my life, I went through therapy, and it has been very, very helpful for me. I've had some good experiences and I've had some bad experiences. But overall, I cannot say that I would take away those experiences. Overall, they have done more good than harm. And I recommend therapy all the time to people. So those are just some of the misconceptions about therapy I wanted to kind of clarify for you all. So now I'll kind of talk about some of the negatives and positives of therapy, and that might help you all to decide whether or not it's for you. Some of the negatives of therapy, things that can be difficult about therapy, is that it does often reveal hurts that we have to face when we are feeling that can feel overwhelming, right? So things that we try to ignore, things that we try to sweep under the rug, that therapist is going to, pull that rug back off of those issues and pull them out, dig them up and lay them on the table in front of you. And we're going to have to deal with them and face them. And a lot of times that's very difficult to do because those issues and things that we're struggling with are often overwhelming for us and we don't want to talk about them. But those are the issues that are causing the problems in our relationships. With ourselves and others. Hello, good morning, Kay Renee. How are you? Good to see you this morning. Welcome in, welcome in. We're talking about therapy. If you've ever considered therapy or been through therapy, that's the topic of discussion this morning. That's where we are. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. So some of the negatives of therapy is that it can reveal hurts. You've thought about it. Okay, awesome. Well, hopefully I'll share with you some things. Right now I'm going through some of the negatives and positives of therapy. So hopefully you'll pick up on something that'll help you decide whether or not you want to do it for whatever reasons, it can reveal some hurts that we have to face. And so we have to know that there's no way that we can overcome the issues and the things that we're struggling with if we do not talk about them, if we don't deal with them, if we don't face them and work through them. So, and that can be hard to do. And so that's one of the negatives, that you expect to have some difficult conversations and talk through maybe some painful issues in your life. It can take longer than expected. Sometimes that's another negative. We think, okay, I'll go see the therapist. It'll be 1 or 2 sessions, and we may be done, and that should take care of it. The shortest time that I've had some, 1-day sessions with therapy that were sort of like family sessions. I've had some, month-long therapy sessions. The longest I've ever been through therapy was probably 1.5 years. I did 1.5 years of therapy when I was going through my marriage thing, and that helped tremendously. I would not take that back. And then, like I say, I've had some short ones and some long ones, but we also know that it can go much longer. Like Kirk Franklin said, he and his family have had a family therapist for 25 years. So, just know that sometimes it can take longer than expected. Sometimes it can help you move through things and get through the process of stuff pretty quickly. It may just take a couple sessions. It may just take a couple of weeks or a couple of months. But other times, if it's something that's much bigger, or if you have multiple things that you have to work through, then it could take years. It could take years of therapy to get you to a place where you can feel comfortable enough, like, hey, we can do this. We can take it from here. I feel good about this, and then maybe you want to do some maintenance sessions or something like that. Really, that's sort of how it is. It can be mentally, emotionally, and physically draining. I'm not even going to lie to you about this. When we're having to talk about things that are difficult, that are not easy, it can be mentally and emotionally and physically draining. I've left some therapy sessions invigorated and hopeful and positive and, feeling like, okay, I can do this, we can do this. And I've left some therapy sessions just emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted, drained, because we had to talk about some of those issues that were very difficult and hard to deal with, that caused me to have to shed some tears, or caused me to have to pull out some anger, that pulled out some anger within me. And that can be very hard to walk through and deal with. So just know that it can be very challenging. You may have some very challenging sessions when you go through therapy. Therapy can also cause us to have to make some life alteration that we don't often want to do. Nobody likes change, right? We all think that who we are and how we are and the things that we're doing is perfectly fine. They're working for us, but maybe they're not working for the relationship. They're not working for the relationship. So when we go through therapy, we may have to make some life alterations, do some shifting, some adjusting, and some working of things that we don't necessarily always feel like doing, right? Sometimes we know that we need it, but we don't feel like doing it. But if we want to get better, then we have to be willing to do the work. It's just like exercise. We want to lose the weight, but we don't feel like exercising. But if if you know that you have somebody who's there with you, who's working with you, you've got a trainer, you're like, okay, I'll show up, I'll do this, I'll help motivate me to put in the work. Therapy is the exact same way. I need to work on my relationship. I need a trainer, I need a coach, I need a counselor to help motivate me and give me some tools of things that I can do to help get me where I need to be. Okay, therapy is the exact same way. Amen to that, yes. um, Therapy can also, now here's another surprising one, right? That I'm going to say about therapy. That's a possible negative. Therapy can be unproductive, right? Like, how can you say that, Ruth? If it's going to be unproductive, I don't want to do it. Well, just before you click off, therapy can be unproductive if you have a bad therapist. If you have someone who is not willing to work with you in the areas that you need working on, if they have their own agendas, if you feel like they're not paying attention, they're not listening, or they're not understanding you, or they're not relating with you very well, then you can have an unproductive therapy session, and it can be unproductive for you. So you do want to make sure that you take the time to try to find the right therapist for you. A lot of jobs and companies now have these programs where you have so many, they give you like 12 sessions, I believe, if I recall correctly. They'll give you like 6 to 12 sessions of therapists, and you can go to a therapist. If you like that therapist, you can stick with them and do your 12 sessions. Or if you don't like it, you can try a new therapist and you get 12 new sessions. So they give you the opportunity. But even companies realize that just because you go to one therapist, you don't have to stick with them if they're not working for you, right? So you go to 1 or 2 sessions with the therapist, you don't like them, you say, nope, that's not the one. You move on to the next one, and then you can get 12 more sessions. So just know that you may have to go through a couple of therapists to find the right one. And that can be a difficult process because every time you go, you got to tell the story, you got to talk about, what the issues are, and bring up all this stuff again and again to try to see if this is going to be the right therapist for you. So that can be somewhat of a negative. But it's the same thing like finding a doctor, right? I go to this doctor, I have to tell them everything that's wrong with me. I have to do all this work up on me, and then you realize I don't like this doctor's not working for me, they can't help me, they don't know what I'm going through, and so we go to find another doctor until we get what we need to get the help that we need, right? So therapy is the same way. Therapy can also be pricey if you don't have insurance, or if you don't work with a company that offers these programs that help you to get therapy. So it can be pricey, and depending on the level of therapy that you need, or the length of time that you're going to need it. So that can be another downside of therapy. And then the last one I'll mention is that it can be a struggle because it has to be scheduled, right? You can't always just call up your therapist at the drop of a dime, and see, sometimes you only have an hour session when you may need a 2-hour session that day, or you may only be meeting once or twice a week when you may need to meet 4 or 5 times a week. There may be weeks like that. So sometimes, the scheduling can be a bit of a negative. Some of the positives of therapy is that it provides new perspectives to help us to see things from points of views other than our own. We can get so headstrong and so laser focused on what we think the issue is that we fail to see the other issues going on around us. And the therapist will often help us to see the other issues outside of just the one that we're laser focused on, right? We just need you to fix this. We just want you to take care of this issue. And they're like, oh no, we can't take care of this issue until this issue over here gets addressed, right? And you're like, no, that's not the issue. This one is, right? So know that therapists will often bring different perspectives and help us to see things from a different point of view other than our own, so that we can really address the problem from a whole view and not just a partial view. Okay. Let's see. Therapy is sort of kind of like it's kind of like that same perspective when you look at a glass, right, that's half full, and some of us look at it and say, oh, it's half full, I'm losing too much, this isn't going to be worth it. If you have sort of a pessimistic view on life, that half of, this is already too far gone, or they can help you to get to that space where you're like, oh no, we're halfway where we need to be, right? So we can just put in a little bit work to get that glass filled back up, right? So it's sort of that thing that helps us to see it the right way, so that we are willing to work on taking the measures and doing what we need to do to get that glass back full again, versus working to make sure that it doesn't empty out anymore, right? So that's kind of how therapy does. It helps us to see things from a more positive perspective versus a negative one. Therapy also helps us to reveal some truths that we often suppress, things that we think aren't important or don't make a difference, or that we can't see how these things are affecting us. It will bring those things out, and it can be very revealing. And to me, that's the best part of therapy, when they help us to find tools and find tools and find different ways of coping and taking care of things and handling things that we didn't even know that we could use or do or have or work on. That's when you're like, oh, this is good, right? This is great. I can use this. This can work. I can work with this, right? And those are the things that sort of help make a difference in how we approach our relationships. If we can't acknowledge different things that we're struggling with, or acknowledge different things that we have that we can use to help us, then we won't work on it. So therapy helps to do that. Therapy also creates a safe space for us to be able to talk. Therapists are often unbiased. They are non-judgmental. They also are under legally binding contracts where they have to, keep private the things that we share with them, and give us a place to vent, a safe space to vent, and which can be huge. But when we are in a relationship and we feel like we have no one to talk to, so definitely therapy has so many positive perspectives that you can use to help for yourself and the people around you. Therapy opens the doors that lead to paths of healing if we're willing to accept it. If you're willing to accept what therapy can do for you, it can create a whole new world of opportunity for you. It can bring peace in the midst of a chaotic relationship. Believe me, I know that. It can be a lifesaver when we feel like we are drowning. It can provide some understanding when we can't understand why things are happening the way they're happening. It can give us some coping mechanisms when things get hard and we're struggling and we don't have to feel so overwhelmed by it, or us be so paralyzed by the issues that we're having in our lives. They can give us some tangible tools that we can physically use to help make our situations better. When we feel like this isn't working, like there's what else can we do, right? They tell you, oh, here, try this. You can do this, right? And so we start those things, we start implementing those things in our relationships, and it's like, wow, that really worked. You're like, that really does help. So that's something it can do, and it can help us stay in a healthy mental state. When we're struggling in our relationships, there is nothing more disappointing, more depressing than to feel like you have to go home or go to work or be in a relationship or have a family member that you are not getting along with. I remember just having days where I just hated to walk in the house, or I just hated to walk in the building, because I knew I was going to have to deal with this person. And that can be very overwhelming and a huge struggle. Good morning, The Right's Way. How are you this morning? How are you? Good to see you. We're talking about therapy. So if you're something you've ever considered or interested in doing, that's what we're talking about this morning. It can give us it can help us, stay in a healthy mental state. And give us a new language to speak. I really struggled. Part of this whole reason that I developed this ministry and this channel was because I struggled with communicating. It was a huge struggle for me. As well as you all think I may communicate now, that was not always the case. I had I came from a place where I said what I wanted to say. I didn't care about your feelings. I didn't worry about whether or not you would accept it or not. I said what I needed to say because that was how I was feeling. And that was not effective for me. And it was causing more damage in my relationships and in my marriage than it needed to, because I didn't have the tools. I didn't know what I needed to say or how I could say things differently that could affect how I was received or how well we got along. And so when I started going to therapy, and they started giving me and sharing with me a new language, a new way of speaking, a new way of saying things so that I could express what I was feeling, but in a way that didn't cause damage to the relationship. That was huge for me. That was huge for me. I can't even tell you. It's so big. It was so big for me that I wanted to start this ministry so that I could help other people work on their communication and work on their language and help give them a new language, a new way of saying, a new way of approaching, a new way of talking, new mechanisms and ways to, tame your tongue. So, and that's why I developed this so that I could share with you all. So those of you who will never go to therapy, who would not even consider stepping foot in a therapist's office, you can come on this channel and be like, okay, well, what does Ruth have to say about this, right? Does she have any thoughts or words on this? So that is why I've started this channel. The Right Way says, no better feeling than to get it off your chest. You're so right. You're so right. And so therapy gives us that place to do that safe place to do that, where we don't have to worry about it. They allow you to say it the way you would normally say it, right? You can say, I hate this person, blah, 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 blah. You can say whatever you need to say, but then they will come back and say, okay, now I understand how you're feeling, and let's be able to talk about this, but let's say it in a different way so that we still are expressing what we need to express, but in a way that it can be better received. And so those are things. Therapy helps give us some building blocks and some tools to create a new language and a new life and a new relationship, and also help us improve our sense of self. Because when we're not getting along in our relationships, we can feel like, Ruth is my therapist. Well, if I can help you in any way, I'm absolutely willing to do that. I'm absolutely willing to do that. So that's what I'm here for, is to just, maybe I can be that go-between for you and your thoughts and your language and that person that you're struggling in your relationship with. I'm happy to be here for you all in the way that I can. So yeah, that's something. So my biggest takeaways in therapy when I was a child was that when I was dealing with that racist teacher, it really helped me to realize that as a 7-year-old little girl, Black little girl, in a room full of kids that were not Black and a teacher who was not Black, it helped me to learn that I was enough, that I was worthy, that I was smart, that I was beautiful. And it helped me to not feel less than in an environment that was working to make me feel less than. And so I was able to cope and get through that school year and to be able to do better and get my grades back up and be where I needed to be and learn, the things that I needed to learn. Right. It says, you are a great communicator. I'm surprised you had gone to therapy before. Oh, yeah, I've been in therapy my whole life. Yes, I had to learn how to be a good communicator. I started when I was a child. Like I said, I had a racist teacher. I went in my middle school and high school years because I had addiction in our immediate family, drug and alcohol addiction. So I had to learn how to cope through that and get through those middle school years of phases. Then in my first marriage, we struggled with mental illness. And so I had to learn about mental illness and how to communicate through mental illness. And then I did it again after I had gone through a divorce, just so that I could learn to move forward. So I've been in therapy throughout my whole life, in different phases of my life, for different reasons and for different lengths of time. So as a child, it helped me to learn that I was worthy, that I was enough, that I was smart, that I was beautiful, and that, there was nothing wrong with me. Just because I had a teacher who didn't care for how I looked and the color of my skin. As a teenager, it helped me to learn that it wasn't my fault, that the addictions of my family members were not my fault. It helped me to learn to be able to stay focused on myself and not so much on the people around me who were heavy or deep into their addictions, and help me to know that I'm not responsible for them. I'm not responsible for their choices and their decisions or their behaviors. It helped show me how to support them from a distance, how to love on them from a distance, and still be able to focus on being the best me that I could be in spite of what was going on around me. So those were, some of my big takeaways from therapy at the different phases. In my first marriage, it really helped me to understand mental illness. I didn't grow up understanding what mental illness was. Believe it or not, addiction and mental illness are two different things. A lot of times people use addictions to cope with their mental illness, but not always. And so, and this was mental illness without addiction. So, so I had to learn how to communicate through that, learn how to express myself so that I wouldn't trigger arguments and trigger bad communication in our marriage. I had to learn how to not judge and how to not degrade my partner or my spouse with the things that I needed to express, right? All these things I needed to be able to express my wants and needs without making them feel less than. And I didn't know how to do that. I thought that me, saying what I needed to say, and not caring about how they felt about it, right? So, and that was not the right way. That was not helping us. That was not helping our marriage. I learned what to expect. I learned some things just to expect with mental illness that I wasn't aware of. Like I didn't understand the whys of why are they behaving this way, or why are they acting this way? And, I come home one day and this is going on, and I wake up another morning, this is going on. I didn't understand all that, all that about mental illness. So, and how to cope and maintain my own mental health in the midst of that. So therapy helped me a lot in doing that. And then when we had gotten divorced, and like I said, this was for reasons outside of the mental illness, I learned how to move forward. I learned how to make sure that I was at peace, that I was not focused on allowing myself to wallow in regret or disappointment or guilt or shame, or allowing what I went through to take over my mental state. And I had to learn how to thrive in my new relationship, in my new marriage, and leave that old stuff, that old baggage in the past. And that was tremendous. It was tremendous for me. So, decide decide if therapy is for you. I hope that I've given you enough insight on what to expect, what therapy is, some of the positives and negatives of therapy, and decide if it's something you want to try. Kay Renee says that's something I want to work on, being a better communicator and not hurting someone's feelings, because I say what comes out sometimes. Absolutely. I have been there with you. I have been there. I say what I need to say. I've never been one to bite my tongue. I've always try to be respectful. I've never been like a big cusser or anything like that. I wouldn't disrespect people in that way, but you can cut people deep without ever saying a cuss word, just by degrading them and making them feel less than. And that's what I had to work on. I really had to work on changing my words, how I frame my words, how to talk without causing judgment or making people feel judged or feel degraded or feel less than. And that was hard for me to do. But I learned it. At the years of therapy, I learned it. So I'm here to share it with you. I'm here to share with you all. So just stick around, and we'll work on those things. So don't be afraid of therapy. Don't be afraid of trying it out and going through the process of it. And know that it can help you tremendously. It can be an excellent and wonderful tool to help you overcome some challenges in your relationships. And I'll be here to support you. I'm on Instagram. You can always DM me or email me at You Can Talk Healthier. Let me give you all my email. You Can Talk Healthier at gmail.com. I wish cussing wasn't my DNA. Yeah, I didn't really grow up in a house where people did a lot of cussing, and I do have a hard time with it. I really do sometimes. I'm able to tune it out. I mean, I listen to it all day. I work in an environment full of men. There's a couple of us women in there, but the cussing is on a daily basis. So I hear it all the time. So I can tune it out. But a lot of times, when I'm in my personal space or in particular situations, it's not something I want to hear all the time. I don't judge people by it. I try not to judge people by it. I realize that it's just a normal language for a lot of people. And they don't know any other, it's just a part of life. Right. And they're not even conscious of it. They're not even conscious of it. But for me, I am a little sensitive to it. And it's so easy to take those words and use them to be degrading for people. And people don't even realize it. You don't even realize that you can be degrading someone by using those words, depending on, what it is that you say. And you may think that it's fully normal, but if they're not used to being called that or used to hearing those things, they're like, oh my goodness, it can feel disrespectful. It can feel very disrespectful and degrading to others. So yeah, it's something that I'm not saying I've never cussed before in my life. Absolutely, I have. I've been in some angry enough situations where absolutely it came out. But it is something that I definitely am conscious of and work to not say and degrade people in that way. So if it's something you want to work on, you will, if you don't think anything twice about it, then you'll continue to use it. But I always feel like I don't know how to, I don't even know if I can express this way. It's hard to tune it out when it's me. Yeah, it's hard to tune out when it's me. Yeah, you probably don't even realize, how often that you use those words and that you say it. It's just a part of your language, and I understand that, so I don't judge people behind that for sure. What I do sometimes judge people by, which I shouldn't, is just not always understanding the appropriateness of when you should, use that kind of language or when you shouldn't, because some people use it all the time, anywhere. They don't care who's around, right? And sometimes you really should be conscious about your environment or who you're around, and as to whether or not this language is appropriate. And so sometimes people don't. That's when their radar sort of gets completely lost, and it's like, oh, and sometimes people have to say something like, hey, don't watch your language in here, or watch your language around these people, or in their home, or whatever it is, because you can be so tuned out from it. So yeah, so just at least try to be conscious of when and where you use that language. If you want to use it in your home, obviously it's your house and all that. So but yeah, so I'm glad you're trying. I'm really glad you're trying. You can do it. You can do it. I know that you can. I know that you can. So thankful for your truth, Ruth, because it does help a lot of us with you even knowing it. Yes, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I'm glad. All right, so you all, I'm going to say a quick prayer and then we're going to head out for the day. I hope you'll have a beautiful weekend. I won't be on tomorrow night for live. My husband and I are venturing out for the first time after COVID. We haven't been anywhere during this whole COVID season, but we're going to venture out this weekend and kind of go have some family time. So pray for us. Pray that we're going to work to stay safe. I have all my stuff. We're going to have our masks and face shields and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, we're gonna go out this weekend. So I won't be live tomorrow night, but I will be back on Monday. No, not Monday. I'll be back on Tuesday with the tip, and then Wednesday we'll be back for class. And I think next week we're going to be talking about colorism and racism. So if you all are interested in learning, what I have to say about that and how we can learn to communicate through that, we'll be doing colorism and racism next week. If I recall correctly, that's what's on the schedule. All right. So let me say a quick prayer and then we'll head out. Father, thank you for loving us. Thank you for being with us and giving us different tools, knowing that we always have you to come to as our ultimate father, as our therapist, as the one who can provide and solve and take care of all of our needs. But you've also given us tools here on earth that we need not be afraid to use. Father, you've placed therapists and specialists and people on this earth who specialize in helping us to communicate with each other and working to heal broken relationships, broken marriages, and struggling families. And Father, help us to be brave enough to step out venture out into that world to try it and use these tools and resources and people that you have gifted to share their gifts with us so that we can work on ourselves and work on our relationships. Touch everyone in this chat who is struggling in some way, shape, or form to deal with and cope through or understand or overcome or heal some of the challenges and issues that they are facing in their relationships. Let them know that we are not without hope. We know you, we love you, we've accepted you in our life, and there is nothing too large, nothing too big that you cannot help us overcome. But sometimes that also requires the intervention of people here on earth that you've all gifted to help in those healing and coping mechanisms of our relationships. Father, we love you. We thank you. Thank you for this platform. Expand it, Father. Help people to know that this will be a nice, safe space for them to come and grow and learn and understand and pick up new tools that they can use and implement their lives. So strengthen them, strengthen us, strengthen this channel, this ministry, so that people can be more aware of what their options are and what they can do to have better relationships. We love you. We thank you. And these things I ask in your son, Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Hey, Cullen. Good to see you. Thanks. How are you? Oh, I'm glad. Good. I'm glad you were here watching. Thanks. I appreciate you all being here. I appreciate you all's time. Give me this time this early in the morning, making me a part of your day. It means everything that you give me this space in your life. And I appreciate it. I don't take it for granted. All right. You all have a wonderful day. I will, if I can, I might pop on this weekend just to kind of show you all, where we are and what's out there and all that. But if not, I will see you all on Tuesday on my tip and back here Wednesday for class. You all have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful weekend. Work on your relationships. Work on your communication. Look up those therapists. See what your options are and know that you can do it. You can do it. All right. Y'all be the light. Be the light in this world. All right. Take care. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. I appreciate it.